Hey guys, it's HINA Chef here at Rebalance Physical Therapy in Center City, Philadelphia, and Narberth, Pennsylvania, which is on the main line. And I'm here to talk to any of you who might be having or been diagnosed with a hip labral tear, but you're also experiencing pelvic floor symptoms, which typically may involve anything from incontinence, meaning that you're losing urine, or having any type of pelvic floor pain with intercourse, meaning that you're having pain with intercourse, or you might be also having any type of pain in the perineum, saddle, or tailbone area that can also manifest as pelvic floor symptoms. So for some of you guys, you may be experiencing hip pain associated with clicking or popping of the hip, or maybe even catching. And some of those symptoms could be happening because you might have a hip labral tear. So what is that? So first I want to explain to you. So here is a diagram of the hip, okay? So that's your hip right over here, and your pelvis actually sits above that. So this is part of the pelvis, okay? And this is part of the thigh, or what's called the femoral head, into what's called the acetabulum, which is the bone of the pelvis. And this is the ball and socket joint. And so what happens is you've got this acetabulum and you have this femoral head, which is the ball, and then here's the socket. And this hip moves inside of the socket. Now, that bone is basically, I guess, anchored into that socket through what's called the labrum. It's kind of like a suction cup that keeps that femoral head into the acetabulum so that you have good fit and movement of that head into the socket, okay? Now, what can happen is sometimes you can sustain a labral tear, okay, which is basically a disruption in that suction cup of the labrum, which is right here. So that's indicated in red. And typically it can become painful. Sometimes it's not painful at all. There's lots of people walking around that have labral tears and they have no idea that they have it. But for many of you, you might have pain with that. You might have what's called impingement or a locking type sensation. Sometimes it's accompanied by popping, but many of you might have groin pain, or even maybe even buttock pain into the back, depending on how you move your hip. And so when people have this going on, you know, sometimes they'll have that treated, but they also might be getting other things treated that are related to the pelvic floor, and they might not realize that these two could be potentially connected together. And the research is showing that people who do have labral tears, often the pelvic floor can be associated with this, and so I want to tell you why. So basically, this is a picture of the pelvis, okay? And then here is the picture, basically you've got muscles all on top, but here is that the femur, and the femoral head is in that pelvis. So of course it's covered by this muscle right over here. But if you can imagine that the ball and socket joint is underneath all of this, okay? Again, because this bone is attached to this pelvis, you have to also look at this entire pelvis as being part of the functioning of this hip, meaning that the hip doesn't just necessarily do its thing on its own. The pelvis also contributes to the way that hip is moving. So everything from the sporting activities that you're doing, from walking to sitting to going up and down stairs, your pelvis is playing a piece of it, and so is the hip, along with everything up and down the body. But we're just going to be focusing on here for right now. So there are muscles that actually attach from the hip, okay, to the front of the body, to the back of the body, down into the inner thigh that attaches down to the knee. But the one we're going to focus on is there's actually muscles that attach from your hip to attach up inside of the body, and this is part of the pelvic floor. So there are pelvic floor muscles that actually attach onto the hip, and that's where the connection is, or at least part of the connection is that you actually have muscles that attach from the hip into the pelvis, which is part of the pelvic floor. So the pelvic floor muscle is not only a muscle that is keeping your incontinence in check, keeping you pain-free with intercourse, and all the other functions that come along with the pelvic floor, which again, I have a separate video for what is the pelvic floor and what does it do. But it also has a piece in adding stability and strength to the hip. So if you have any tears, okay, going back to this labrum, okay, other muscles, if there's a disruption in that labrum, meaning that socket isn't staying placed into, if that ball isn't being placed into that socket, then all the other muscles that are around that hip have to work kind of overtime to keep that ball in the socket. And so if those muscles have to overwork, and one of them being the pelvic floor, then the pelvic floor muscles might create tension, and with that comes dysfunction in bowel bladder, as well as potentially having pain with either intercourse or other types of pain that you might be experiencing in the perineum. And this is not just with women, but with men as well. With men, you can be experiencing testicular pain, scrotal pain. With women, you might have vaginal pain. Men, you might have tailbone pain as well. Women, tailbone pain. So you can see that, you know, some of you guys that may have been diagnosed with a labral issue in your hip, or you're experiencing any of the symptoms that could be this, that, oh, if you're going to your gynecologist and expressing to them that you're having symptoms in your pelvic floor, and then for you men, maybe you're having any type of urinary changes that might be associated with your pelvic floor, and again, I have videos for this that you can look into, then there could be a connection between your hip and your pelvic floor. So maybe some of you are saying, hey, that's me, what do I do about it? So of course you want to have good conservative management first to see if you have any improvement with that hip pain and along with that pelvic floor. So what you really do need to do is find a physical therapist that understands how to treat all of these things in an integrated fashion, meaning they know how to really treat the hip, look to see which muscles aren't functioning right, and knows how to manage that hip, but also knows how to treat the pelvic floor in conjunction with that hip, and then also up and down the body, because sometimes the spine can get involved, the knee can be involved, there could be other things that are involved with what you might be experiencing, and you need to really find a physical therapist that understands how all of that is connected together. And so that is really what many of you might need to do. But for some of you, you may feel that, hey, I've been having these pelvic floor symptoms, but hey, I'm noticing popping and stuff in my hip too, but I've never had it treated. So your thought may be, hey, maybe I actually need to get this hip looked into a little bit more, because maybe that's contributing to what I'm experiencing. Or perhaps you've had physical therapy for your pelvic floor and it hasn't necessarily worked. Well, it could be that there might be a hip connection to that, and some of it may involve this pathology, meaning a hip labral issue that might be going on. So again, if you're looking to have this treated conservatively, then hands down, you need to see a good physical therapist that understands how to treat both of these things and start getting treatment for that. And if you live in anywhere near the Philadelphia area, surrounding suburbs, as well as on the main line, then no brainer, you can come and see us. We work on these dysfunctions all the time in a very holistic, comprehensive manner. And for those of you who don't, then you really do want to look for a pelvic floor physical therapist in your area that understands how to treat this in a very holistic manner and understands both the orthopedic side of things as well as the pelvic floor side of things. We also have lots of other great information on our blog posts as well as on our website, and lots of other YouTube videos that might be helpful in understanding the connection to all of this. Our website is www.rebalancept.com. That's REBALANCEPT.com. Sign up for our newsletter, go through our other YouTube videos and our website. And if you have, if you happen to live anywhere near us, then sign up for an evaluation with us or a consult, which is on our website. And I hope this was this video was very helpful to some of you, and hopefully we will see you soon, or you find the right person to take care of you in your area. Thanks. Have a wonderful day.